Uh, well, we've been on a series here. It's called "The Leader Within," and let me lock this thing real quick. About the book in the book of Nehemiah. We've been looking at the book of Nehemiah together, and just talking about being a leader. Everybody in this room is called to be a leader. Everybody, you're leading somebody somewhere. We're all followers and we're all leaders. Okay. Some of us are in different phases of leadership, different areas of leadership. But you're leading your family, you're leading, your kids, you're leading at your work. There's just all different ways that we lead. And Jesus, I personally believe, and I've said this during this series, that I believe that when we become a believer, Jesus, he calls us to be leaders. He said, come and follow me and I'll make you an influencer. I'll make you a fisher of men. In order to fish, you got to be able to influence. I'm a pretty good fisherman, so I can influence the fish. Chris Feldhouse is not real good at this, but I am. So I'm playing. He's a good fisherman. But when you go and start fishing, you got to influence. You got to influence that bait's got to influence that fish to get to bite, and that's the way we are. We're called to influence, no matter where we're at. So go up to Nehemiah. We're going to continue on tonight. We may get it finished, we may not, but we'll just pick her up if we don't. So the book of Nehemiah, just go there with me. Lessons in leadership from Nehemiah. You can go back and listen to the other previous nights that we had, last 3 Wednesday nights. This is part 4. Lessons in leadership from Nehemiah. The first thing is this, and we talked about it last week, but I want to say it again. Leaders motivate others. Leaders motivate others, and we have to stay encouraged. In Nehemiah chapter 2, let's look here in verse 17, or in the paper or pixels, however you choose. If you don't have anything, then you can look on the screen too. But it says, then I said to them, and it says Nehemiah, you see the distress that we're in, how Jerusalem lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire. Come and let us build the wall of Jerusalem that we may no longer be a reproach. Now remember Nehemiah was leading. They were in Babylonian captivity for 70 years. There was 3 exiles out of Babylon. Nehemiah led the 3rd exile out, and their responsibility, God called them to rebuild the wall. This is very interesting. A city has to have a wall in order to be safe, okay? So this was a big task, and it was a task that needed to be done. He said, Jerusalem's lying in waste. The enemy is coming in and out, robbing us, taking advantage of us, right? And that's why you read Nehemiah, you see these enemies, Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem, and these people coming against, they're getting mad. They're getting upset because the wall's being rebuilt. Well, why? Because they were having a heyday stealing from the people of God, okay? So they were getting mad, man. They're rebuilding the walls. They're securing the gates. They can't get in anymore. So Nehemiah is leading this charge. Let's build the wall in verse 18. And I told them, he's talking to the leaders here and those that are listening. So I told them of the hand of my God which had been good upon me, and also the king's words that he had spoken to me. So they said, let us rise up and build. Then they set their hands to this work. So Nehemiah, he motivated the group. He motivated people to get behind the project of rebuilding the wall. And we said this last week. You have to keep yourself encouraged if you're going to motivate somebody else. If I'm not motivated, I'm not going to motivate somebody else, right? And we talked about that last week. Now let's move on. Number 2, leaders are out front setting the example. Leaders are out front setting the example. Let's look here in chapter 3. Let's read verse 1. Then Eli, I had this down. Eli, let's just call him Eli, all right? Sorry. Then Eli, the high priest, now notice what he was. What was he? There's only one what? There's only one high priest. There's all kinds of priests, but only one high priest. Now look. Then Eli, the high priest, rose up with his brethren, the priests, and built the sheep gate. They consecrated and hung its doors. They built as far as the Tower of the 100 and consecrated it as far as the Tower of Hananel. Verse 5, next to them the Tekoites made repairs, but their nobles did not put their shoulders to the work of their Lord. Now, what I want you to see here, leaders are out front setting the example. Notice there's only one high priest, and he's with them working. The leader of Israel, the religious leader of Israel is out here with a hammer, with saws. He's out here doing the work. See, some leaders, if you notice here in verse 5, we have some nobles here. Put that up there for me, Marianne. Next to them, the Tekoites made repairs, but their leaders, their nobles, did not put their shoulders to the work of their Lord. So, listen, some leaders here thought they didn't have to work. Right? And I'm going to tell you something. Leaders that aren't out with people, they have little influence. Now, I'm not telling you that a leader has to do everything. Matter of fact, that's not a healthy thing. Moses got rebuked by his father-in-law because of that. Remember, they was all coming to Moses, and he was dealing with all their stuff and all their things. And he told him, and Jethro told him, said, "Listen, Moses, listen. This is going to kill you." All right. So I'm not telling you that leaders have to be doing it all, but they have to be present. Leaders have to be present. I was listening to something recently. Adam had sent me something about T.D. Jakes, and they was asking T.D. Jakes some questions about his ministry and all he does. And they asked him, say, "Hey, listen, how do you do this?" He said, "Well, I found out I don't have to hold everything. I just have to touch it." He said, "The minute I start holding stuff, then actually it's stymieing the growth of everything." But leaders have to be connected. Leaders need to be connected. Leaders get their hands dirty, man. I mean, this is what's going on. This high priest, this leader, they're out front. They're setting the example. They got dirty hands just like everybody else has dirty hands. Are you with me? They're involved. Leaders have to be out in front. Now look here in 1 Peter chapter 5 up on the screen. This is good. 1 Peter 1, it says, "The elders," now we're going to look at it as leaders, okay, "who are among you, I exhort. I am a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, and also the partaker of the glory that will be revealed." Verse 2, "Shepherd," he tells them now, "be a shepherd of the flock of God." Shepherds have to smell like sheep. What's a shepherd without smelling like a sheep? Leaders have to be involved. It doesn't have to be doing it all, but they need to be involved. He said, "Shepherd the flock of God which is among you, serving as" what? "Overseers, not by compulsion, but willing, not for dishonest gain, but eagerly." That's what he's saying. "Nor as being lords over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock." I want you to write this down. Leaders don't drive, they lead. Leaders don't drive, they lead. And leaders lead, not lord over. If you guys that are especially leading groups of people, if you are driving people, it will not work. I think I've told this story before. We was out in the Amish country one time, and we was at Hirschberger's. Where that big old huge horse is, the massive horse at Hirschberger's. That's one that has the fried pies and all that stuff, And we were there, and we were out there, and all of a sudden I heard this yelling. Andy and I think it was me and you. I think we were there. It was like I think you were there. You may have been inside, but whatever. But I heard this yelling and screaming, kind of like, and it's a sheep farm around there, and that shepherd was hollering for them way on top of that hill, and they went right to that shepherd. As soon as he started hollering, they went running, the whole gang. But listen, leaders are out in front. And when leaders are out in front, they heed the voice of the people that is leading. Amen. So it's important that we, as leaders, that's in our homes, at work, church, whatever we're doing, that we're out in front. We're not driving, we're out in front. Sheep don't do well when they're driven. They have to be led. It's very, very important. And we're not lording over people. It's not what we're doing. I'm not lording over somebody. You're not lording over somebody. Now, if you're in a place of authority, and maybe you are as far as in your jobs, listen, don't abuse your authority. Listen what the Apostle Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 8. I'm just trying to be practical with you guys. He said, for even if I should boast somewhat more about our authority, he's talking about his authority as an apostle, which the Lord gave us. But why did the Lord give us this authority? For what? For building up and not for your destruction. Right? I shall not be ashamed. He said, I don't want to be ashamed. I don't want to be somebody out here that's lording over people, that's driving people, that's a slave driver over people. Because what? It's going to end up coming back. I'm going to feel ashamed about that at some point. He said, use the authority you've got for edification, for building up. Amen? I mean, people let power go to their head. You ever been around power-hungry people before? You ever been around bosses that are power-hungry and you know it? They want their point heard and they don't listen to anybody else. They don't lead. They drive. I've been right there. I've saw it. I don't want to be that way as a pastor. I don't. I strive for this. That's why I put it down. Because leaders set the example. They're out in front. The next thing is this. Leaders do things they don't always want to do. Let me show you this. In chapter 3, we have all these, and you can read it. We're not going to for the sake of time. We actually skip over this third chapter because of all the people that's mentioned, and it gets kind of boring. But we have leaders from different regions, diverse professions. We have goldsmiths, perfumers, merchants, male, female, different levels of leadership, high priests, district leaders, nobles, all coming together, okay? And they're coming together. But look at this one. In Nehemiah chapter 3, verse 14. Look what happened. Now, this guy, and we're going to call him Melchijah, that's good, the son of Rechab, leader of the district of Beth there, repaired the what? What was their job? What was their job? To repair the refuse gate. Now, do I need to explain what refuse is, right? This is the dung gate. He built it, hung its doors and its bolts and its bars. See, leaders, this guy, right? He's a leader of the district, and he's repairing the dung gate. So, listen, leaders sometimes have to do things they don't want to do. Leaders sometimes have to do things they don't want to do. I'm sure that wasn't a real prestigious job to do, but somebody had to do it. They had to get the waste out of the city. If not, you're going to have all kinds of disease. So it was important. So as leaders, sometimes you've got to do stuff that nobody else wants to do. Nobody. And sometimes as leaders, you have to do more than what other people are doing. Remember there in verse 5, it says, next to them the Tekoaites made repairs, but their nobles not put their shoulders to the work of their Lord, right? They were doing the work. Now look in verse 27. Look at this. Verse 27, after them, the Tekoaites repaired another section next to the great projecting tower as far as the wall of Ophel. So they were doing more. They done something else. They got finished with their project and went moving on to something else.